Hello! Today we're going to be discussing body cavities, at least the major ones. Now, a cavity is a hole or an opening. So when we talk about body cavities, we're talking about hollowed areas that the organs are inside. Let's start with our two dorsal cavities, or those that are toward the back. This right here is where the spinal cavity is. Now, the spinal cavity is made up of a series of vertebrae, these backbones. They all have an arch in the middle, and if you stack a whole bunch of things with an arch on top of each other, the way the spine is set up, that then creates a tunnel or a cavity. Now, what goes down this tunnel? Well, this is the spinal cord. Next, we have the cranial cavity, made up by the bones of the skull or cranium. Now, what goes inside there? Of course, the brain. As we head to the front, we look at the three major ventral cavities. The first here is the thoracic, think thorax or chest. It is made by the rib cage wrapped all around, and then on this bottom, on this inferior aspect, we have this broad muscle called the diaphragm. That's what forms the thoracic cavity. Here we have the abdominal, so the abdomen, the abdominal cavity. It is formed on its superior side by the diaphragm, so the diaphragm separates the thoracic and abdominal cavities, and then wrapped all around the various abdominal muscles. And then down here in this pelvic bowl, the pelvic cavity, formed by the pelvic bone or pelvis. So what's inside? Well, here in the thoracic, we have our heart and our lungs. Okay. Also, we have the trachea as it heads down into the lungs, and we have the esophagus heading down to the stomach. Well, here in the abdominal cavity, you can see that there's the kidneys there in the back here, but this is also where we have all of these various digestive organs. We have our liver, we have our stomach, our various intestines and spleen and pancreas, all those there in the abdomen. And what about here in the pelvic cavity? Well, for both sexes, this is where we'll find the bladder. But for females, this is also where we'll find the uterus and the ovaries. For males, this is where we find the prostate gland. So there are some biological differences there. So we have our spinal cavity and our cranial cavity in the back, the dorsals, and then we have our thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic, our ventral cavities in the front. Of course, there are others. There's the nasal cavity, there, the nose. There's the oral cavity, the mouth. There's what's called the orbit, or where the eyes go into that cavity there in the skull. Those are the three main categories of cavities.